Hey y'all, I just finished reading Mask Feasts, The Little First Grand Secretary in My House. The dying First Grand Secretary, Shui Tingyang, finds himself regretting the way he treated his lost wife and son. When he wakes up in a much younger body, he decides to do better by both of them. Just to get this out the way, this story is 272 chapters plus another 9 chapters, so it's really 281. No one, to my knowledge, has this story done in its entirety, except maybe Wuxia Spot, but I got to them last. Of course, I found out about this novel from Novel Updates, but between I So Hungry translations and Kitchen Novel, you're only going to get a sensible translation up to about chapter 72. After that, your best bet is to go over to Wuxia Spot, and even then you'd have to look on a search engine and find a link for it, because the last time I tried to find it on Wuxia Spot, I couldn't find it by the title. And then go from there. And Wuxia Spot is fully machine translated, but it's very bare bones. Nobody went back and fixed all the fixings. It's you on your own after a point. So the whole idea is Shui Tingyun is an orphan. His parents died when he was pretty young. But before they died, they had essentially adopted a young girl who was about 2 years older than him. And they pretty much said that would be his wife when, they grew up. When the parents died, the young girl pretty much did her best to make sure that he was set in life. She would do a bunch of odd jobs. She would take care of him. She was pretty much like an older sister, even though he never saw her as an older sister, because he knew in his head that was supposed to be his wife. However, when you're a little kid, you don't think about it that way. These things kind of embarrass you. So, in their original life, he had been somewhat ashamed of her because she was just a country girl, and he was a relatively promising official. I mean, it wasn't always a smooth ride, but he was a learned academic, and he was educated, and she wasn't. She was just a girl who knew how to hustle and make things shake. Now, because he was rebirthed, he was able to go back he had lived to about 70 in his first life. So he was able to go back with the knowledge that he originally had, make some changes in his life. He applied what he could apply. He made do with what he couldn't. And of course, they ended up having a better life. But I do have to kind of make a point. So again, because he was kind of embarrassed with the whole situation, he was always kind of distant, kind of weird with his life. So she was of the belief that he did not love her, and he was distant with his wife. He was distant with his son, and it really was just because very early on in his career, he was very promising. He was given the chance to marry one of the cabinet minister's daughter, and he was like, "No, I'm married." And when it don't go like that, they throw you out in the boonies where you have to kind of make it shake for yourself. He didn't want his wife and son to come out there, so he left them. He pretty much left them back in their hometown. And he actually ended up getting a second transfer to somewhere else. And that time he was like, okay, you know what? Come out to me. And as they're on their way out to him, they get into an accident. As far as he's concerned, they're dead. It was not his intention for them to be dead, but they ended up dying. Now he's grief-stricken, and he's like, hell. So he ends up back he does end up back in the capital. I don't think there was much of a difference, but he does end up marrying that other cabinet minister's daughter. But eventually down the line, he ends up finding out the daughter was in fact the person that got his wife and his son killed. Actually, on his deathbed, his son comes to him and said, "We weren't killed. I've been waiting for you to die. You see you dying by yourself, sir." So there's that, but I bring up that point to say, as the novel goes on, because we spend so much time in his head, we come to realize that while he's not very good at showing that he loves his wife or whatever, that boy had no interest in anybody that wasn't her. And it's partially because he's honorable, but also partially because he feels entitled to this girl that was always supposed to be his wife. That's why he never let her go and marry somebody else. He was like, now, once I'm done with my exams, we are getting married. Please and thank you. So, of course, I read this because y'all know I love a good rebirth, and I really love seeing these things from the male point of view. This story can be considered a romance, but the romance is put in the background because like there's so much nation building and political intrigue and stuff going on in it. And again, because of translations, you lose out like a good bit. Like, it's a worthwhile story, but half the reason it took me so long to read this is because the translations were so bad. It would take me a while to really like get back into the story. Like, something really juicy had to be going on for me to be like, I need to see. We do get the wife's perspective. Her name is Zara, and it's actually pretty good. Like, Zara is a real hustler. Like, she knows how to make money for her and Tingyan to go forward. And because this is his rebirth and he appreciates her more now, he really starts to understand her struggles. Like, he makes sure that not only is Zara able to hustle and make money, he makes sure she gets to be a for real businesswoman. He makes sure that gal does exactly what she wants to, because in his first life, he didn't like that she was going out and hustling and making money. He felt like that was uncouth. In his second life, he was like, baby, do what you do. Just make sure you're doing it with me as your husband. Amen. Personally, I like this story. I would have loved to see it as a drama, even though I know it's unlikely, but it would be nice if it was. I would specifically love to see it properly translated. Oh my God. Something that I thought was very interesting about this story is that it does not act like other rebirths where you would go back into where you would have a life 3, or you would end up getting more insight into the later parts or the parts we did not see of life 1 or life A. Like, in this particular rebirth story, the epilogues are the epilogues, you know? Both epilogues just continue the story. And it makes sense because you are made to assume that the person their daughter marries is actually the person who saved the wife and her son in the first life. But they don't, you have to kind of infer that. I might have to do a second video for this. There are parts of these books that are regular tropes that you see a lot in Chinese dramas, but you never really get to see explored because so many of these dramas are based on books that are, again, from the female lead's perspective, or books where you know the female lead is supposed to be the main character, so we don't get to explore it as much as we would like. There's a whole issue with filial piety and how the male lead ended up an orphan because of his elder uncle. And then you have the female lead, how her and one of her older sisters were sold outside of their family. That's how she ended up in Ting Yu's family. Like, I'm annoyed that it took me so long to get this book sorted, because I have notes from when I was originally reading this story, and I remember having thoughts later on down the line that I can't put back together because I did not write those thoughts down. I did, however, write down that they were having for real sex in this book. I don't know if Mass Feast is a woman or a Mian, but just how I said Ting Yun felt entitled to his little wife. Like, he was very serious. Like, he was very much about seeing what was going on with her, if you catch my drift. But ultimately, I just enjoyed this whole story, especially when you consider that it's very much from a commoner's perspective. Even though there was a hidden prince trope run around the back there, but it's not the main character, it don't matter. Yeah, I think I hit all the points I actually wanted to hit, now that I think about it. So if you like nation building, rebirth, male-led romance, and resourceful young women, then this one is for you. There's also a conversation to be had about paying for good translators, but we'll get there when we get there. 4 stars.